9.
No.
All right, I'll kick us off and let's get the show going, I guess. After you're done vaping. All right, you're listening to a Posits. You fuck. I'm leaving this in.
They do have that dumb little carnival out there, if you can get it in view of that.
Ooh.
Sucks so much, by the way. All right, you're listening to a Posits on the Fringe, the show where we discuss political and religious news and current events from a leftist atheist perspective. The show is sponsored by the Atheist Society of Knoxville. We are your hosts. I'm Dustin.
Alistair.
And Sam.
And y'all, I picked up it's called Snowbird. It's a stout brewed with cocoa nibs. And what's a cocoa nib? I don't even know, but it's a cocoa nib and raspberries. It's from the Jackalope Brewer Company out of Nashville. It's actually a lot sweeter and tartar than I expected. It is. They are proud of the alcohol content on this bad boy. It's like 30% of their design. It's like 6.4%, and they're excited about it. It's kind of tart. But I mean, it's drinkable. I don't know if I'd pick it up again, but I mean, it'll be nice to enjoy today. It's kind of a weird off tint to it because I think they're raspberries. What do you got today, Al?
I have Benevolent Overlord by Monday Night Brewing. I thought that was appropriate for us, but it's a
Sounds
coffee...
like a fascist beer you picked up there, Al.
Coffee...
Way to support fascism, you ass.
Coffee, hazelnut, Imperial Stout. And it's
Imperial,
a 12.2... 12.2% alcohol.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
All right, so one and done. Good for you.
I'm having the Bear Walker again out of... It is another Jackalope.
Oh, is it okay?
Representing Jackalope. Hit us up. Hit us up, Jackalope.
We're looking for those sponsors, right?
I think beer is the only sponsors we'd get.
Maybe. I don't know. We can probably get into sex toys, maybe.
Society?
We are already sponsored, yeah. By the Society of Knoxville. You guys, super excited. We received fan mail.
We did.
We did receive fan mail, and I wanted to cover that. And I wanted to do it, take it sincerely, and so I'm gonna cover it, and you guys just give me your thoughts on it. Okay, so should I say the name?
Yes.
All right. This is
shout out to our listeners.
This is Josh Maga.
No, Maga. That's an interesting surname.
It was given to him by his third generation grandpa.
A long line of shoe lickers.
So first off, the opening music sucks. If you're going to be some atheist group and supposedly lead some satanic ministry, play some Manson or Slayer.
Well, we would have liked to, but they have a really hefty fee for those rights. So if he wants to send us some money so we can get some licensed music, he's more than welcome to.
Also, fuck you, I like our music.
Yeah.
All right, so then you get into the meat and potatoes of the show, which may have a glimpse of some ribeye, but is mostly tofu and instant mashed potatoes.
Well, we do eat a lot of soy, which means that we don't have any testosterone.
Oh. I like the food metaphors here. Like, okay,
yeah, that was pretty entertaining. And then, I mean, the instant mashed potatoes kind of made me laugh.
But tofu and it's like, what is it? What did this guy have growing up? All right, now he's going to talk about
chicken nuggies.
Chicken nuggies.
You grew up on nuggies.
I grew up on nuggies. What are you talking about?
Probably still eating those nuggies.
Listen, my parents we ate like broke food, and I loved broke food. I'm talking
bologna
like
sandwiches.
No, I mean we would do things like pork beans and hot dogs, or hot dogs and macaroni, and things like that I enjoyed. I don't know if we had Spam growing up. Did you guys have Spam growing up?
Nope.
No.
You guys weren't Spam? All right, so speaking of how we grew up, he goes on to talk about us, the hosts. These people likely have no friends that are any different from them politically or in character, yet preach tolerance. Most likely led undisciplined childhoods and currently either live off family members or in slumlord apartments, working, if working at all, dead-end jobs that pay mostly in tips, and complain about the motivated part of the population that applies themselves and has health insurance, vacation, etc. This podcast obviously is meant only for like-minded people that will likely get bored with it after a few episodes because it spews all this liberal garbage that they have already heard.
This podcast is certainly not for Proud Boy wannabes, so there's that.
I can tell he didn't really listen to much because he's calling us liberal and tolerant, and that's
I got
really
that.
not where we go from.
Yeah, I thought about that immediately. Like he couldn't have listened to us because we talk shit about liberals.
Yeah.
I went to this cat's profile and kind of saw some of the shit he posted, and I'm like, how is this dude going to click? Like, if you see our logo, like, there's nothing there that screams, "Hey, I should listen to this and like it."
I can't figure out at first. So a friend of mine found out like who he is and where he's at, which is out near Lebanon, we think. And so I got into a fight with some people in a hip Mount Juliet group, and I remember a Josh there. So I'm like, it must have been from that because he's in that area and he'd be in that group. But nope, he wasn't in that group. So I can't figure out how they could have found us.
No clue, but
I'm sure he spends all of his time trying to track down any liberal voices online to completely own, as he did. I feel
well,
owned.
he didn't recommend our show, unfortunately. This fan of ours, but I think we'll take his
take his advice. I think
we'll
we're going to do our
advice.
next podcast out of a truck. Inside the cab of a truck with glasses on, and we'll scream a little louder, so that it'll be a little bit more like the podcast he's used to.
But we'll do it on Facebook Live instead.
Yeah.
And I might even use my newest iPhone. I'm gonna use like it's 5th generational potato quality camera. Good stuff.
Josh Feinstein style. That's his name, right?
Feinstein. The guy with that gets mad every time Starbucks doesn't put like Christmas on their cups.
Yeah.
That guy's a fucking nut. What a tool.
Well, thank you for listening, Josh Mag.
Yeah, and we appreciate you reaching out to us and giving us fan mail. We do have some serious topics that I know, Al, you brought to my attention, but I want to make fun of fascists real quick. You shared an article. This is from CNN. The Capitol riot defendant flips to help prosecutor against the Proud Boys. Before we comment on it, or just read the first sentence of it. At least one of the Capitol riot defendants has flipped against the Proud Boys, agreeing to provide information that could allow the Justice Department to bring a more severe charge against the group's leadership, according to an attorney involved in the case. Like, I wonder, like, how they turn on each other so quick. Like, I mean,
I'm surprised. Fast. I mean, they've displayed their selfish, entitled bastards. You look at how these people have gone around the last 4 years. The last year specifically, where, all you have to do to protect other people is wear a fucking mask. But my rights, it's like... So they're just kind of showing it even more. They'll protect themselves first.
It was probably part of a plea deal, obviously, but... It
is, and that's... I mean, the article kind of talks about how, prosecution, one of the things they're going to do is try to get as many people to just give information and plea out. Because they're wanting to get Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. That's who they're really wanting to focus on.
And leverage more serious charges against them.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm all for them turning on each other. And
what I think he's really respecting the thin blue line. What's more respect to turn on your own brethren? That's how much respect he has for the cops.
That's right.
He's showing exactly where his loyalties lie.
That's right. He had that flag. He
not
had that
have
flag.
been one of the ones engaged in beating the shit out of cops that day.
Well, somebody has to die on that cross, and it's going to be him. One of them will betray them. Oh, wait, never mind. Like, half of them are going to betray them. That's going to be one hell of a last supper for them.
This is kind of old, but I don't think we ever talked about how many people's family members turned them in after the Capitol riots.
We discussed it, here and there, but so many. I saw, there was a tweet that I think you shared on Facebook where, she messaged her uncle, and... told him that she turned him in, and he was like, "What the fuck?" Why?
Yeah, there's the son whose dad threatened to kill them all if they told that he was in D.C. that day, and the kid just took a moral stand. He's like, on principle alone, I have to turn him in. He threatened to kill us. Kid's only 17, 18 years old. He was young.
It's a pretty good way to say "fuck you, Dad."
Yeah.
So you guys, Al, you brought up something I didn't know about. You said this is kind of circling the activists chatter right now. and I now know why. After I did some research, we're going to talk about Pervis Payne, and Pervis Payne is an individual that has a intellectual disability and has been on death row for 33 years. His execution was actually set for December 3rd of last year, but Governor Bill Lee, of course, this is here in Tennessee, gave him a temporary execution reprieve due to complications and issues due to COVID-19.
Right.
This order is set to expire tomorrow, April 9th, and this will allow the Tennessee Supreme Court to then schedule a new execution date.
And that's important to clarify, because there's a lot of people who are thinking that when the stay ends tomorrow, he'll get executed tomorrow. That's not the plan. They still have to schedule a new date for
that
it.
That means there's still time, and we're going to discuss kind of the things that y'all can do and other resources we could point you to. But I kind of want to go into the background of why he's there and kind of what happened.
Right.
Okay, so essentially what happened was Mr. Payne had always maintained his innocence in this, and that he said he was waiting for. So what happened was he was charged with murder and, of course, on death row. So he said that he was waiting for his girlfriend to return from her apartment in Millington in June of '87. Then he discovered that his neighbor and her children had been brutally attacked, and Mr. Payne, who lives with an intellectual disability, said he was shocked by the bloody scene, but despite his panic, he tries to help. And then the cops arrive, and he has a sinking feeling that they're going to charge him with that, and then later the day they did. He was tried by an all-white jury.
Okay. So he is black.
Yes,
he's a black man. He was
the woman who was killed was a white woman.
That's important to note because I'm going to talk about the trial as well.
You said it was more than one victim?
The children as well, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, he was tried in one of the counties there that is one of
Shelby
the top
County,
25.
I believe.
One of the top 25 counties that had the most lynchings during a time period. And the trial itself, they made sure to reference her white skin several times. This is kind of a throwback to what they did to Emmett Till. And how they charged him.
They didn't just look at her skin tone and they pointed out the stereotypical things with black men that we hear, how big they are and, aggressive and...
Not only that, they said that he was a drug-addicted, sexually charged because he had looked at a Playboy that day, had taken drugs, and, wanted to attack her. Well, they didn't drug test him at all. There was no history of violence or drugs.
Oh, drugs, yeah. He has no history of drug use, so...
But they just like Emmett Till, they made it a big black man sexually charged and wanted to take his victim, and he was convicted and has been on death row for 33 years. The kicker on this is that he is intellectually disabled, and that's technically unconstitutional. Yeah,
the Supreme Court ruled that you cannot put an intellectually disabled person on death row. You can't execute them. It's immoral. And the Tennessee has admitted the same thing. They've said we don't want to,
They said that they have no interest in executing a person with an intellectual disability, and he has proven undisputed evidence or presented undisputed evidence.
But that hasn't actually gone to court yet.
He can't. No, he can't yet because at this time there's no mechanism, and we're going to discuss a bill here in a little bit on what was introduced to essentially for Pervis to give him that ability to do so. But this isn't. I mean, it's very, very common, and it's even still today where, and we're going to talk about it in our ACAB segment, where police roll up on us in a situation and see a black person in a crime and immediately assume that they did this crime. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of disgusting, I think, that they always tried to put the sexual matter on there too.
Well, they don't just pull up to a crime and think a black man committed that crime. They'll just go up to a black man and assume they've committed a crime without anything, backing that up. I think it's also
because they're just lazy and they're like, oh, well, we can wrap this case up really quick. I got a bunch of paperwork, let's just... They don't really care about actually solving the murder. They care about closing the case.
And that's sometimes the case because public outcry and stuff. They want to see, people want to see a murderer put behind bars. And so, yeah, I think I think there's known throughout history that there's been times that the police just pick somebody. The Satanic Panic stuff and the Memphis 3? Where, they just needed to close that case. So they found these rough kids and it was them.
Central Park 5?
No.
No, this was this. I think.
I was saying them too as well, right?
Oh,
Same
right,
thing,
right.
Same thing
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly uncommon. And let me kind of read a quick stat here before I get into the Innocence Project, which had contacted the public defender and to do some DNA testing. Which, before I get to the stats, did you, Al, read that one of the crucial pieces of evidence, a fingernails, went mysteriously missing?
And they said that the victim did scratch her attacker.
Right.
There's other things, like a witness saw a man running and Pervis said he saw a man running. The woman's husband or ex-husband, had a history of domestic violence. So there, like, all signs pointed to somebody else, but yeah,
right
Pervis
now I believe so. He was actually serving a sentence, but apparently during the day he was allowed to leave.
I think they got confirmation that he wasn't there that day too.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of reasonable doubt, and nothing that I read here proves that Pervis was obviously the killer. But with his intellectual disability, he was not really able to. He wasn't a good witness on the stand to be able to, because he can't handle complex things, complex questions.
He shouldn't have even been on the stand.
No.
But a lot of black people are at a rate much higher. Let me just convicted or wrongful convicted. So innocent black people are 7 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of murder than innocent white people, according to the National Registry of Exonerations. Studies have found that the victim's race also influences the likelihood of the death sentence being applied. Nearly 300 black people accused of murdering white people have been executed since 1976. That's approximately 14 times more the number of white people executed for murdering white people. And that's from the Death Penalty Information Center. That's staggeringly bad.
Yeah, I mean, a racist is going to say, well, they commit more crimes, but I mean, you look at the percentage. Like, no, we're looking at a percentage of these that are done, and if the percentages don't match, especially when there are more white people,
But the stat still stands, and I'll read it again: that innocent black people are 7 times
right
more likely to be wrongfully convicted than the murder of murder than innocent white people. That's just awful. But I do want to talk about the Innocence Project, who did contact, like I said, the public defendant to work with.
They've done
Payne,
great work over the years. They've gotten a lot of people.
They do. So the Innocent Project's mission is to free the staggering number of innocent people who remain incarcerated, and also to bring reform to the system responsible for their unjust imprisonment. I do want to cover some, and I wanted to look more into the organization because, I mean, they're doing great work. They have said that of their clients, over 3,555 collective years have been spent before they were exonerated. They've had 232 victories. 192 of those were from DNA.
Yeah, DNA, I think they got started around the time that DNA testing came out. And, that's kind of, I think, what motivated them is now we have another way that we can, look for evidence or, get these people off. Because that DNA testing, when it came out, they were able to get a lot of people off with that.
Yeah, and one of the other things here is that I think they said the average length of time or years served before they're exonerated was around 16 years. Like, they go in at 24 and leave at 42, or I'm not sure the exact number.
And just imagine that. Imagine never committing a crime and having your life, taken from you. Being stuck in a jail cell when you didn't fucking do anything.
It was 16. So they said the average age when wrongly convicted is 27, and at the 43 is the average age when exonerated.
Just completely ruining lives.
Yeah, and 62 of those of the 232, 62 have not received compensation because 14 states do not have compensation law at all. So they spent 16 plus. That's an average. There could be a lot more. They could be 20 years, 30 years. Pervis Payne could, if in fact he is innocent, right now would be 33 years. So, and without compensation. So not only did they take up a third, or a good portion of your life, but then you leave with nothing. Or another problem is that, they're in prison and then crimes happen to them inside there. They become victims. Mm-hmm. The real perpetrator has caused more crime, caused more murder, sexual assault. So it's a problem. I recommend they're a great group. I recommend you guys can donate to the Innocence Project and look into what they do. They've done a lot of DNA testing for people who can't afford it. It's expensive.
All right.
It could be between $5,000 and $50,000 to do DNA testing, according to their website.
Yeah, I believe it.
But right now he can't. He is intellectually disabled, and as of tomorrow, the Tennessee Supreme Court can reschedule. But there is a bill right now that was introduced by the Black Caucus here in Tennessee that would allow such a measure.
Yeah, it gives as of right now in Tennessee, there's no way for him to appeal to get off of death row. I guess present this evidence for being intellectually disabled. There's no steps for him to petition to prove that,
right.
And that's what this bill will do. And it seems like it's mostly supported, like it seems bipartisan support on
it's
that.
Gone through.
It?
I mean, it's gone through. It didn't die. Like it's gone through several scheduling steps, but they're running out of time. I mean, Of course, he still has to be scheduled. Rescheduled.
Right.
Or Bill Lee can petition him to be for clemency.
Yeah, and a
so
lot
you
of
guys
people
can call. Your representative call Governor Bill Lee and say that you think you should grant him clemency.
And they got celebrities paying attention to this case now and pushing it. So, hopefully with, the more people see, the more people know, the more pressure gets put on either Bill Lee to grant clemency or the state of Tennessee to pass this bill to let this man out.
So I read the bill that you sent, and there was something that caught my eye that I was like, well, that's ridiculous, and that needs to be fixed, and I'm going to read it, if you don't mind. So under the present law, for purposes of the prohibition of a death sentence for a person with an intellectual disability is defined as a significantly sub-average general intelligence function as evidenced by a functional IQ of 70 or below, deficits in adaptive behavior, and the disability must have manifested during the developmental period, or by 18 years of age. 70. They would have to be below 70 in order to qualify. I mean, there's several other intellectual disabilities. This bill removes that requirement. This bill removes the requirement to have an IQ of 70 or below, and it recharacterizes intellectual disability to mean significant limitations in both functioning and adaptive behavior, including social and practical skills that originates prior to the person's 18th birthday.
So if someone gets brain damage afterwards?
Yeah, I thought about that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they have brain damage afterwards, after 18, this bill would not qualify for them to not be
But he wasn't proved to have intellectual disabilities until he was an adult, so will this bill even protect him?
I think they wrote it in such a way that it would. I don't know the details of when his developed. I mean, they said under the age of 5 that he was having these struggles with complex things, and in school even did not do well at school at all. Couldn't drive because it's too complex. Right,
and we know that the medical field has advanced greatly. People talk about how there's more autism, but there's probably not more autism. It's just more people are being diagnosed. See, I wonder back then how many issues just went overlooked by the medical community, just because there wasn't as much information. So, or parents, if he was raised low income, schools and all this other stuff, looking at the kids that come from lower incomes, they just assume a lot of times that they're going to be less intelligent. So, they get moved through the system and nobody really pays attention to these kids having difficulties. And that probably was the case with him, where maybe he could have been diagnosed at an earlier age, but the parents didn't know what to do, didn't have the resources to do something.
The fact that was even in the courtroom or in death row, I think we all agreed when we looked at. Really, there was no motive. They said that he was very friendly, was working, going to the church and doing it with his dad.
But in fairness, they said that about the BTK killer too. Like every time every time there's a mass murder or a serial killer, the people in these people's lives are always like, oh, he seemed like such a nice guy. He was a loving father. Now, I believe it with Pervis Payne, but I don't think he's a psychopath at all. But psychopaths are really charming people.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Psychopaths are charming people. That's how they get away with it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said.
Okay.
They're charming. You look at domestic abusers, one issue that the victims always have is that their friends, when they try to tell them about it, they're like, but he's so nice. And, they're people who do really fucked up shit have a public persona that's off, doesn't display that, If people had fucking abuser written over their head, they wouldn't have people to abuse. So they charm, But once again, I don't think that's the case with Pervis Payne, but.
Right. I mean, again, there was no history of any drug use, any violence. There was a number of, I guess, mitigating circumstances or circumstantial evidence that would have pointed to another suspect, especially since another witness. So I looked at some other stats about how many of these come from bad witnesses, though. Mm-hmm. Of the wrongful convictions, 68% of all convictions, 68% were from bad witnesses that either later recanted or said they were lying. 52% was from bad forensic work. So there's a lot of problems that lead to wrongful convictions.
Sounds like they just caught him there. And
it kind of sounds like he got all of the above, because when you look at forensic work, the fucking fingernails disappeared, and there's no explanation for how one of these key source of DNA of the attacker is missing. They were able to test one item for DNA, and they found another male's DNA that was not him. But it was too corroded for them to tell who it belonged to.
Right. I did see that, but there's just a lot of shit with this. I think they're just like, hey, there's a black man here, these people are dead. We'll just lock this away. And now he's on death row. I don't know if the bill will pass before they can get that done. If there's enough people that call Governor Bill Lee, they can.
I don't know, because of COVID. I don't know how many people in the state of Tennessee are currently on death row. If there's amount of time that has to go between each execution. So I don't know how long. I doubt when the state starts deciding when to reschedule. I doubt it'll be Monday. I expect it'd probably be a month or two off.
Months, probably.
Yeah. So this episode we're actually filming in Clemson, South Carolina. And we actually have to end early because it's the Back the Blue, Tony, Lauren, and...
Oh, is that tonight?
Yeah, that's...
I got my tickets. Did I get my tickets in the mail? Or I've got to go to the Back the Blue?
Yeah. I got my tickets, 2 tickets to not show up.
I only got the 1 ticket to not show up because I didn't think about it. It's so sad I'm going to miss that. We're going to be missing the Back the Blue rally with Tommy Lauren.
We don't know.
That's Caitlin Bennett.
That's Caitlin Bennett. Oh. She's not the pants shitter, but I mean, Tommy Lauren can shit her pants on the stage too. I don't give a shit.
Blonde gun nuts like to shit their pants.
That's so funny that we did that. I wonder how many people did that.
A lot. Most people I know.
Don't you think they would have had a way to counter it though?
I mean,
They're
they
not
can't
prepared
anticipate
for this?
that. I don't. They didn't. Well, they weren't prepared when TikTok users
fucked over Trump, wasn't
fucked over
it?
Trump's. Yeah, man, his was empty as shit.
Because
That was funny.
yeah,
Sometimes I just love Gen Z so much.
they're really great sometimes. Like,
I feel like millennials just did a much better job of raising their children
I think so too.
because it's just
Maybe biased, but
they troll so fucking well. I mean, they're and in mass too. Like they'll get behind. Sometimes they get behind bad things. Like I know they tried to cancel Eminem over one of his videos.
I don't think they really were.
Yeah, every time that I have a friend that's always like, blank blank is getting canceled this week, and I'm like, are they really? Are they really? Like, or is someone, like we were saying in our cancel culture episode, that there's like the right wing fake cancel. They want to have, so that people will get pissed off at liberals for trying to cancel something stupid that no one is actually caring about.
Well, that's like who is it? Fucking Mitch McConnell is trying to cancel Coca-Cola and
Go ahead and cancel Coca-Cola. I'm happy with that.
Delta. Like it's a shitload of companies,
Did you
and
know
he's
that
saying
Coca-Cola
that they need
killed union leaders in South America?
Yeah, but Mitch McConnell's saying that corporations need to stay out of politics. But he's like, I'm not talking about your donations. Like, keep giving me your money, but like, stay silent over there.
It's up to us to say what you want.
Yeah.
You have to give me money, and then I'll say it, but stay silent until you give me that money.
In our earlier episodes, we did discuss the Georgia bill because it hadn't passed yet, but they had introduced it, and we kind of covered it a little bit because we knew they don't want another 2020 to happen again, where they lose 2 senators and the presidential vote, and so they introduced all these things. But the only thing that kind of pisses, so we knew it was going to pass because GOP has to cheat. They have to, because when it comes to a lot of candidates, Democrats and independents who vote democratically, or people who just will vote against a Republican, seriously outnumber them.
Well, and we were already talking about how these bills coming up, they're wanting to test the Supreme Court. They're hoping that they can put all these bills through, and when it goes to the Supreme Court, they'll overturn Roe versus Wade. But there's this other, in Arkansas, the state house has passed a bill to allow schools to teach intelligent design. The chief sponsor cites big change in SCOTUS makeup since 1986. The 1986 ruling that struck down the ban on teaching evolution.
Absolutely, that's what they're doing. They're testing. So, like Sam mentioned, they're testing the waters, but they're trying to ram as many of these unconstitutional bills,
right? So yeah,
to make them constitutional bills by the new Supreme Court.
We're going to start seeing. I expect Tennessee to do this super soon, where we'll get a bill up to teach creationism in our public schools.
That's how they plan to create more Republicans. Make stupider people attack the school system, make sure that people can't get rid of their kids, more uneducated kids. That's
been
how
working
get
so
the next
far.
Generation of Republicans. It has, yeah.
I don't know, like Gen Z's doing all right, but it's really hit or miss. I mean, you still have Gen Z running around touting like Trump shit,
So, the one thing that so going back to Mitch McConnell and these companies, that these are Atlanta-based companies, Delta, Coca-Cola. I don't know who the other one was. I know the Masters moved, right? The Masters and the MLB. But where the fuck were they before it was signed? Why weren't they making noise?
They probably didn't think it would pass.
Oh, come on now. He'd already said,
What was it? Because a lot of these
Kemp,
companies...
Right? What's the governor's name in Georgia?
Kemp,
right?
So,
but they weren't making noise until it was safe for them to do so. Like, it's already done. Because they probably want Republican leadership because it benefits corporations.
Well, they kind of shut down something a few years ago. I believe in Atlanta or Alabama, one of them. I can't remember what the bill was, but like Walking Dead stopped filming.
Yeah,
it was Atlanta.
The film industry stopped an anti-abortion bill from passing.
So,
because Atlanta is becoming the new Hollywood, and a lot of even the Marvel movies and Disney films are being shot there.
Is the film industry involved in this current little boycott, or did they already?
I thought I heard they were.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about it.
But they were successful then.
I'm just saying, if So if I was a corporation that was truly against the voter suppression laws, I would have put pressure on the governor before he signed it, not after it became a law.
Right.
Because now the only thing it could be do is for the law to be challenged.
Like we've said, it's all about their own optics. They had an internal meeting that said which one is going to make us look better to support or not support this.
But they also needed the bill to pass because they need Republican leadership because they're very large corporations, and Republicans are very, very nice to corporations. They're capitalists.
So are Democrats.
Yeah,
Democrats are just as capitalist as
they are, but Biden wants to increase the corporate tax rate, which oddly enough, Jeff Bezos supports. Oddly enough,
because he's rich enough not to care about
that's
that.
Also
he's
true.
Got bigger issues.
That's also true.
Like
but
stomping out unionization.
Yeah, fuck that.
He's working hard on that right now.
Speaking of, we're in Knoxville. I did drive by the former Easttown Mall is currently being demolished right now.
Could you have they're trying fulfillment center? Could you have a more dystopian name?
It's a delivery center or something like that. I don't think it's actual fulfillment because it's not large. It's not going to be large enough to be a fulfillment center.
Speaking of things getting
only 700
down,
employees.
I was driving downtown the other night, and I ended up over by Barley's, where Atheist Society will usually meet.
Stupid.
And I saw exactly where this goddamn baseball field is going. You know where that underpass we all park under? It's right across the street from that.
No way.
The money laundering station.
That's going to fuck up parking too, or is it,
it's gonna fuck up so much. It's like right downtown Old City.
When is that project scheduled to be completed? Do we know?
They're already tearing the buildings down,
Jesus
so
Christ.
they're working on it.
Yeah, which has already been turns out that it's a money laundering scheme, but nobody gives a shit.
No, especially like
Randy Boyd Money Laundering Stadium. I think that's going to be the official name. It's sponsored by Randy Boyd Money Laundering Scheme.
Randy Boyd's a piece of shit.
Speaking of pieces of shit, you know who's a piece of shit right now that's on my shit list? Fucking Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, for whatever, because the Democrats have such a slim majority, and by some majority, because they have the tie-breaking vote with Kamala Harris, all it takes is one defector from the Democrats, and we saw that with Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema. I don't know her first name, but so Joe Manchin does not support weakening the filibuster. Does not, and that's going to prevent a lot of the Biden administration's bills, like this infrastructure bill that he's introduced, and a lot of other things. He can't do gun control measures because there's not enough support from the Democrats or the Republicans. So I know he signed a few executive orders today regarding like ghost guns or homemade guns from ordered parts and some kind of modification to a pistol that makes it more accurate. But there's not a lot he can do until things can pass the Senate. And if the simple majority won't do it, think about last time the COVID relief bill had zero support from the Republicans. We were happy to have a majority in the Senate and the House, and not Trump in office. I know we weren't excited about Biden by any stretch of the imagination.
Best president in my life.
But nothing's going to get fucking done. I don't know. I don't think. And except through executive order.
Yeah, no, nothing's going to get done. We need...
That means because nothing's going to get done in 2022, I think the Senate's going to flip again.
When's our next opportunity to get fucking Mitch McConnell out, though?
Right now, walking to his door and making sure he doesn't breathe anymore. Like, that's the only thing that's going to stop him.
Atheist Society of Knoxville does not support that statement in any way, shape, or form.
We actually have a disclaimer at the end. That's fine. Yeah. So you don't have to say that, but...
I think we need to call focus on that
one. But... That's kind of shitty. I hate that Joe Manchin has that fucking power. He could be the one dissenter, and that's all it takes for nothing to go through. I hate that one person in a Senate of 50.
And he's way more centrist.
And I don't know if you'd heard about people talking about packing the court to kind of right what Donald Trump did.
Right.
And Justice Breyer, I think he's one of the more liberal ones. Mm-hmm. Doesn't want to see that happen. So we're going to be stuck, I think. And I don't think even Biden is wants to do that now. But I'm terrified of this makeup of the Supreme Court for the next 15 to 20 years because he put young people in there. I definitely think Roe v. Wade's in trouble. Obergefell may also be in trouble, which was the ability for gays to marry. So
while we're talking about like senators and stuff, Fitz Scheller, who is the attorney for Joel Greenberg, who is the tax collector that was busted for child sex trafficking, that led to Matt Gaetz being investigated.
I saw that.
His lawyer's like, I am sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today.
Fuck Matt Gaetz.
I feel like we should, while we're on the topic of senators and state lawmakers, touch on Matt Gaetz for a second.
I know we picked on him last time a little bit, but...
Yeah, but this is going to be an ongoing thing, and I think like you can get a mention out of him nearly every week. He's such a fucking shit show. He's still on that, like, they're trying to, what's the word? Not blackmail, extort.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to extort me for money and blah, blah, blah.
None of that made any sense.
Oh. It's like reeked of desperation.
Have you still been following the Chauvin trial? The Chauvin trial, rather?
I took a few days off for mental health, but I've been listening the last 2 days. They had a physician or a specialist in respiratory and all of this. The prosecutor.
So this right now is still the prosecution's presenting of their evidence and witnesses. So the defense has only been able to cross. We haven't got to them yet.
And I didn't hear all the cross-examination, but I heard the prosecutor's questions. It sounded good. I heard part of the defense attorney, like the cross-examination, and he kept trying to get this witness to admit that it could have been drugs, and he won't.
That's what they're trying to push in the news.
They're trying to push that because that's going to be again, like I said last time, that's going to be their primary defense is that it was the drugs and
it's like
that killed him, not the officer's actions.
Before I came over here, I was listening to it, and he's like, would you say that because he had methamphetamine and fentanyl, that those two drugs counteract each other? He's like, not when it comes to respiratory issues. Like heart issues, yes, but not respiratory issues. And he testified that like there are certain things that his body did, like his legs kicked up a certain way, and there were certain movements that he made that were very typical of respiratory, like dying from respiratory issues versus dying from a heart attack or something like that.
Speaking of, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw a tweet, and I couldn't verify it because I was busy today, but it said that there was a knee on his neck for 2 minutes and 34 seconds while EMT found no pulse. Was that accurate? Or
yeah.
That's accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
He was dead, and they just stayed on him.
You can't really get more straightforward murder case than this, and the problem is that we have to run in circles around such an obvious...
The problem isn't that it's not that he murdered him.
That it was
the cause of death. No, it's going to be the cause of death, that it was...
Oh, man.
It was the drugs.
So here's the thing, though. Like, we just talked about Pervis Payne, this man with intellectual disabilities. There's enough to show that he likely did not do it, and he got a life fucking sentence. You have a white cop with a black man, and, like, any rational person can look at that, and, like, it's clear cut.
Right.
But he, I won't be shocked if he gets off. I won't. Because he's white. He's a white cop.
Speaking of cops, I saw an article how the blue wall of silence, which is apparently a thing. Have you heard about the blue wall of silence?
Is it like
cops don't turn on cops?
Cops don't turn on cops. Yeah,
about how that's been broken in this case because the chief, the chief and several other officers were like, "Nah, dog, like you fucked up. Like that was definitely excessive force, unnecessary and like I wonder if that's to protect the image of their police department. or
I would think they would want nothing to do with this.
I think so too. I think it's like they were subpoenaed to testify, or whatever the case may be.
They had to have been subpoenaed, but yeah, I think it's huge that the police chief was like, no, that was excessive
That's going to weigh
force.
pretty heavily with the jury, I think.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, when the guy's boss is like, no, that's not part of our protocol.
I mean, the jury's doing their job. I heard they were taking notes. Chauvin's head was sat down the whole time.
The medical examiner had the jury all engaged today. Like he had all these animations going to describe certain things, but he was also telling the jury to feel their neck so they can understand the layouts and stuff like that. And the jury was all actually following, and they were engaged, and they were talking about how important it is that the jury was actually engaged in this stuff. So I've been listening. I have Sirius XM in my car, and they have a court TV channel that's been covering it. So when they take their breaks, they have lawyers and shit discussing big things in the case and things to look for and stuff like that, which I've been appreciating because I can't see it, so being able to hear this is what's going on here is kind of nice.
Do we know when the prosecution is expected to wrap up? And for the defense to take over?
I haven't heard that yet.
I mean, they're presenting a lot of evidence, a lot of witness testimony, expert testimony.
What, we're about to wrap up the second week?
Yeah, this is the full second week of just the prosecution.
They expected it to go on for several weeks, so...
I really hope the Rittenhouse isn't that fucking long.
I don't think Rittenhouse will be. It's completely different cases.
And different evidence to it. Because there's very limited video that I've seen that shows the prior to actions. You may have seen more than I have.
I was on my computer the night that happened, watching the live stream, and saw as the live streamer ran over to put a tourniquet on the dude who got his arm shot. So I was watching as it happened, and then that's kind of what I do though when something like that happens. I try to find every video I can and watch, and I examined, slowed things down, paused. Am I seeing this right? When they were saying, well, he had a Molotov cocktail. It's a plastic bag. Look at it. You can pause it and see it's a plastic bag.
I did hear that claim about the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into our ACAB of the week, we've kind of covered some various topics this week because, in a post-Trump era, I know we bitch about it, but news has been kind of slow lately. But recently in news, it was announced that personal information of over 536, I think that's a number, roughly, million individuals, their information was leaked on Facebook. And if that was the population of a country, I saw the infographic, that would be the third largest country in population in the world. And Sam, how is Facebook addressing that?
By not telling anyone who was and wasn't a victim of this. We all could be.
I mean, didn't Zuckerberg's own shit get leaked, like his phone number?
I hope so. Send that to me.
I'll
call him myself.
I thought I saw in the artical that even that his was among the list. So yeah, it was phone numbers, first and last names, email addresses, things that people can use to either scam them or
I think we need to send Facebook a warning that they violated the terms of service.
But I don't know how this is a vulnerability that happened in 2019.
Yeah, 2019. Well, that's what they're saying, is it happened in 2019.
Why are we just now hearing about it? Who reported this? Do we know? I didn't. It's just been obviously all the news picked it up because that's a massive fucking leak.
One thing is there's apparently somebody who claims they deleted their account in 2015, and theirs is included in this.
I know about a dozen people that have problems with their accounts that have been deleted. You can't really delete a Facebook. Once it's there, and they're going to continue exploiting it. There's no way to delete a Facebook account.
Have you guys ever tried to download your Facebook?
I did, because I have a bunch of pictures of my kids.
How large was that download? I've always been curious. I know it's kind of off topic, but
yeah, I don't.
I was because
it seems like it's mostly links. Like it's an HTML file that links it.
Oh, okay. But yeah, this massive. I mean, so people use this for information. Scammers will buy this stuff because they can say, "Hey, I'm your son. This and this. I've been in an accident. Send me money." Sort of thing. That's what scammers do. All they have to have is have information and know things to, leech off the elderly who are vulnerable. And for Facebook to not take any action because it's a simple thing. It's a simple email. Hey, your information was leaked. FYI. This is what was included in the leak.
If Zuckerberg is good at anything, it's passing the blame off to everybody else. I think he actually said this was the user's fault that their shit got leaked and not his.
Okay. Yeah.
He didn't word it like that, of course, but he was essentially saying this is the user's fault, not ours. And he's saying, it wasn't a leak. Our database got scraped. It was a scrape, not a leak.
Oh, so they got busted into and straight up stolen.
Yeah.
Not leaked. Big difference. So, but it's not their fault that they had improper security to protect themselves from this.
Yeah.
Clearly not their fault.
So yeah, next time you get your Facebook account banned, just remind them, hey, you leaked my information, I can say what the fuck I want. Fuck off.
Speaking of, how's it feel to be out of Facebook jail again? And then as soon as you got out of jail, you had a comment botted?
Well, that was my backup account. And it was so
That seemed like the most benign post. How did that get flagged? What was that?
I don't even understand. I ran up on an accident yesterday, and it was fucking horrible. I'm amazed at people.
13,000 gallons of fuel was
I thought it was
spilled?
23,000.
Something like I didn't.
But here's my thing: is they kept saying it didn't get into the sewer system.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm looking at
looking
at where that accident happened this morning, and there's no fucking way that didn't get into the sewer system. I don't believe it. The sewers, they had fucking drainage on each side of the road where fucking gasoline is spilling everywhere. But this tanker was flipped upside down. Multiple cars crashed into it. I'm amazed anybody lived in that, but there seems like non-life-threatening injuries. Fucked me up though yesterday. But yeah, so I posted about it on Facebook, and people were like, "I hope everybody made it out okay," this and that. So I found an article later that it was saying that the guy driving the tanker and a guy in a truck both were sent to the hospital with non-life-threatening injury. So I screenshotted just that part. I posted a link to the article so everybody on my page saying I hope everybody's okay would know, hey, nobody died. And it got marked as spam.
The fuck? That's the best algorithm ever. Way to go, Facebook. So you guys ready for some ACAB of the week?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this is ACAB of the week.
All right, guys. So this incident that we're about to discuss happened in 2019, but a federal magistrate ordered the public disclosure of the video of the body cam as part of a lawsuit alleging racial profiling. This is from the Los Angeles Times. Against civil rights violations brought by music producer Antone Austin, known as Tone Stacks, who was arrested in May 2019 despite not being the suspect in a domestic violence call. Austin and his girlfriend were taken into custody for resisting arrest. And so I watched the video, and it was kind of like what we were talking about before. They're driving around, and they don't know who they're looking for at all. They don't. So they pull up to the general area. So they make a U-turn after passing. And one officer asks the other, he's like, "Hey, this dude?" And he's like, "Probably." And they get out and just immediately go to detain him and put him in handcuffs. They didn't attempt to question, try to get information. anything like that. Now he's like, "Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like he reacted as anyone else would. That who's out. He was taking his trash, either taking his trash can back in or back out.
Well, even in the beginning of the video, the police officer tells this guy, "We don't know who we're looking for."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's-
But he told him, he's like, "Hey, man, I live here." He's like, "Yeah, well, we don't know who we're looking for." Okay, but yeah, you're just happy to assume this is the guy and arrest him without questioning, without trying to get identification. And I I wanted to look into it, and apparently the officers weren't given a description, and I kind of want to blame partially the dispatcher. I think that's one of the crucial pieces you would get from the girlfriend, I think, who was calling the police on her white boyfriend or whatever the case may be. They didn't attempt to get a description of the individual.
The 911 caller may have gotten it and didn't send it to the police.
Dispatcher.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very possible. But so they arrested him and her for resisting arrest, and so now the magistrate released this video, and I'm going to post the link in our show notes. I encourage you all to, at least look at that and see the kind of fuckery that's going on and how they treated this man and the girlfriend during this video. And Al, you had something else.
So it was March 29th, a 13-year-old kid in Chicago was shot by police in the chest. They're saying that, they were responding to gunfire. They saw two black people. One, the guy was older, probably in his 20s, I think, 23 maybe. And the kid was 19. They kind of took off running. One person got the older guy, and they're claiming that this 13-year-old boy had a gun on him, and they just shot him in the chest. The mom's like, my kid didn't have a gun, all this. But the video is supposed to come out tomorrow. And the Chicago Police Department is telling their officers that they will not get days off and be prepared for 12-hour shifts.
So they know it's on the video.
They know it's on the video, and they're preparing for a riot. If this 13-year-old kid is pointing a gun at them and threatening to shoot them, that may not cause a riot, but that's not,
You don't prepare for a riot when you expect, obviously people will see this and see, obviously this is we had to take action thing. This is oh shit.
And I don't have a whole, there's just not a whole lot of details out on it.
I love how cops are more prepared to prevent riots than they are to not kill innocent people.
Right.
During before the Chauvin trial, and also in Kentucky, they fortified their shit to prepare for riots because they keep fucking up and will continue. I didn't remember something earlier that I wanted to cover with the previous story. The guy that was the man and his girlfriend who was arrested while they were looking for a white subject. So, they said that when the woman who actually made the 911 call, they told the officers that Austin was not the man that she called about, they continued with the arrest. And that fucked up.
Yeah. It's
like I said, they're lazy pieces of shit. They got to close the case, he's right here.
Yeah, it's he was resisting at this point, but he never should have been arrested
anything's
a day
resisting.
before. Yeah,
it's one of those rules where, do what the authoritarian says, no matter what.
Well, I hope the lawsuit is fruitful for him, and he can kick off his. He's in Hollywood, so he's obviously probably a pretty decent producer. It's expensive to live there.
You want to end the show on something entertaining?
What you got for me?
So, there's been these White Lives Matter rally that's being organized.
Where?
All over Seattle,
all three
New Jersey.
attendees?
We've been kind of watching these, the thing, but White Lives Matter Seattle on the Telegram channel, they changed the picture to anti-fascist flags and said, good news, this channel, like many of the other White Lives Matter channels you are a member of, is just an anti-fascist op. Lucky for us, as admins were able to scrape all the folks who joined this channel as well as your profiles. So, yeah, and I kind of knew some of that was happening because I had friends that were like, yeah, I'm in this White Lives Matter channel. I'm in this one. And I knew a whole lot of people that were watching these channels. But yeah, apparently some of them created the channels and were getting fascists in there and to do the organizing. And then they got all this information. Now, I know even anti-fascists that I've known have had to line up and be like, oh, wait, scratch that name off your list. That's me, while they're looking at all these names and stuff. But this is good because they trust Telegram right now.
Yeah.
And if they find out, well, all of these groups I'm joining, it's just anti-fascists running it and they're wanting to dox us, that takes away a platform for them. That breaks up where they can organize. So I like it.
Speaking of platforms, before I wrap up the show, we had started watching the QAnon something. I think it's this Calm Before the Storm or something. Storm on HBO Max. It's a documentary. Have you guys started watching that yet, or been into some of it?
I only watched those first 2 episodes. I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch.
I watched the first episode, and it was cringy as fuck.
Cringy in a good way?
Well, no, the documentary is very good, but okay. Like the things that they really believed, and that they really believed is fact, and that he's got inside code clearance, and that he's predicting that this will happen, and Trump will say this, and then they pick up on the tidbits. It's I highly recommend this doc if you can stomach it. I mean, it's pretty. Well, it's a good documentary. Like it's tough to watch because I find incredulity embarrassing. Like when someone falls for stuff so easily, but then becomes so involved with it that it becomes their personality. It's just cringy.
I think everybody who does not know and understand what the Q movement is about needs to watch this documentary. There's a lot of information on there. You can see why, like, I've been freaked out at times about this movement growing. This
is a good documentary to show. I'm not going to say names, but the more liberal-minded people we know who say these people are harmless.
Right.
It's a good documentary to show those people.
Exactly. There's a lot of people that, like, when I talk about certain things with them, they're like, oh, it's harmless. It's no big deal. Why are you paying this any attention?
It'll blow
Just
over.
Ignore it and it'll go away. Well, no. Half of the fucking country fucking ignored these QAnon people and they fucking stormed the Capitol. And they probably would have done more if it weren't for all the arrests that came from it. If the FBI and Department of Justice and all that weren't on the people that broke into the Capitol, they would have gone back.
Imagine what would have happened if Trump was still president.
That's the only fucking reason. Because that's the only fucking reason I voted for Trump. Or, I'm sorry, I voted for Biden. I voted against Trump.
I believe that in, but
I wasn't voting for Biden. I was voting against Trump's
politics.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
never not going to be voting for somebody. That's just how politics work.
Mine was I was voting against not just Trump, but his followers. Because I was watching them. I was watching them plan. They were planning fucking violence openly. And then when Trump got on that stage for the debate and told Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, because I wasn't planning on voting. I was a hard no on voting this past year until that moment. And my jaw dropped. My eyes got big. I'm like, what the fuck? And that's when I started reevaluating things. I was like, if he gets in, like, they're already emboldened and empowered by him. But if he gets a second term, what will they do? He could only do so much. A lot of the shit that Trump did had already been like the courts put a block on a whole bunch of shit. But his followers,
right?
Them being able to organize. Like I'm glad that fucking Trump lost. I'm almost glad that they did storm the Capitol because it put a halt to a lot of fucking shit they were planning and wanting to do. It put a lot of them in their fucking places.
All right, guys. Well, before we ultimately wrap up, I do want to tell our listeners to visit the innocenceproject.org. You can make a donation there if you're so inclined. You can actually go there if you Google Innocence Project and Pervis Payne. You can actually write him a letter, and he does read those.
He's loving getting those because he can't have in-person visits right now, and he, like his mom said, he reads them over and over again, and it takes him a while to read it, and he has to read it multiple times. But they're really, like, they're making him feel a lot of support right now.
Right. So I encourage everyone to do that. But also, fucking call Governor Bill Lee and demand that he grant clemency.
Right. Do everything you can.
Yeah. Time is running out, and, bills take time. And even then, it's also go through the court system. And if so we'll see what happens with that. I really hope we'll know more tomorrow and in the coming weeks. But that's going to wrap us up for episode 10 of Apostates on the Fringe. I'd like to you guys can find us on social media, of course, on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to visit the links to the articles or contact the show, you can visit us at apostatepod.com. Please consider sharing out the show and giving us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And we'll see you guys next week.
We are not a prostate pod.
Another fan mail.
Thank you all very much.
Apostates on the Fringe. Apostates on the Fringe.
The views and opinions of the hosts of Apostates on the Fringe do not represent the views and opinions of the Atheist Society of Knoxville. For links to all our musical contributors, go to apostatepod.com and check the About Us page. A big thank you to Michael Scott Arden, who allows the show to use his full catalog.